In November 1975, the elected Prime Minister of Australia was removed from power, not by voters, not by a military coup, by the Queen's representative, using a constitutional mechanism that hadn't been invoked against a sitting leader in modern Australian history. 3 weeks earlier, Gough Whitlam had done something unprecedented. He'd threatened to publicly identify CIA personnel operating inside Pine Gap, a joint U.S.-Australian facility buried in the dead center of the Australian outback. The CIA's response, according to a cable later attributed to Theodore Shackley, the agency's East Asia division chief, warned that intelligence cooperation with Australia would be reviewed. Whitlam was gone within weeks. That story has been debated for 50 years. Some historians call the timing pure coincidence, a domestic politics driven entirely. Others point to a paper trail suggesting Australia's most powerful ally helped engineer the fall of its government. But the Whitlam affair is just one chapter in the larger story of Pine Gap, Australia, a facility so secret that for decades the Australian public wasn't told what it actually did. So what is Pine Gap? The official answer, a joint defense facility supporting satellite communication and space research, operated cooperatively by the United States and Australia for mutual security. The answer that emerges from declassified documents, whistleblower testimony, and leaked intelligence files is considerably more complicated. Pine Gap appears to be one of the most important signals intelligence stations on Earth, a critical node in America's global surveillance architecture, and according to documents released by Edward Snowden, a direct participant in drone targeting operations that have killed thousands. The central question is blunt. What actually happens inside Pine Gap? Who controls it? And what has been done to keep its true purpose hidden? Before this is over, you'll see the declassified cables, the whistleblower testimony that cost a man's freedom, and the intelligence documents that finally revealed what Pine Gap, Australia, was built to do. The official story begins in 1966, when Australia and the United States signed an agreement to establish a joint defense space research facility near Alice Springs, in Australia's Northern Territory. The name was deliberately bland. The stated purpose? Tracking satellites, supporting space research. For years, that was the public line. Pine Gap was a scientific facility, nothing more. And look, there's a kernel of truth there. Pine Gap does track satellites. It does monitor objects in orbit. Those functions are real and verified. Australia's defense establishment has consistently described the facility as a cornerstone of the U.S. alliance, essential for monitoring missile launches, verifying arms control treaties, providing early warning of nuclear threats. The Australian government maintains it has full knowledge of and joint control over everything conducted there. Fair enough. Parts of that hold up. Pine Gap's role in missile early warning is well documented and genuinely serves Australian security interests. No serious analyst disputes it. But the questions begin with what else happens at that facility. And they begin with a 22-year-old in California who stumbled into something he wasn't supposed to see. In 1974, Christopher Boyce got a job at TRW, a major defense contractor in Redondo Beach. TRW operated communications equipment linked to Pine Gap and other classified satellite programs. Boyce worked in what insiders called the Black Vault, a secure room handling encrypted CIA traffic. What Boyce found in that vault rewired his entire worldview. According to his sworn testimony during his espionage trial, the classified communications revealed that the CIA was conducting covert operations to influence Australian domestic politics. Specifically, Boyce claimed the agency was working to undermine the Whitlam government, which the CIA viewed as a security threat because Whitlam kept asking uncomfortable questions about Pine Gap's true activities. Now, Boyce's credibility is complicated. He sold classified documents to the Soviet Union, motivated by disillusionment, he said. He was convicted of espionage in 1977 and served 25 years in prison. A spy's testimony is inherently compromised. That deserves to be stated plainly. But Boyce's account didn't exist in isolation. It aligned with what was becoming visible through other channels entirely. Whitlam himself had publicly stated that his government was being kept in the dark about CIA activities at Pine Gap. In 1974, he demanded a full briefing of the facility's actual operations and received what he later described as incomplete and misleading information. Then there's the Shackley cable. In early November 1975, just weeks before the dismissal, a communication attributed to Ted Shackley reportedly warned that if Whitlam continued threatening to expose Pine Gap operations, the intelligence relationship between the U.S. and Australia could face serious consequences. The existence of this cable has been confirmed by multiple journalists and researchers, including investigative journalist John Pilger. The CIA has never officially released it. On November 11, 1975, Governor-General Sir John Kerr dismissed Whitlam using reserve powers of the Crown. Kerr, it later emerged, had maintained contacts with CIA-linked organizations, including the Association for Cultural Freedom, which had documented agency funding. So, was the dismissal a CIA operation? The documented evidence establishes several things. The CIA was alarmed by Whitlam. The agency communicated that alarm through official channels. The Governor-General had intelligence community contacts, and the timing aligned with Whitlam's Pine Gap threats. What the evidence does not establish is a direct causal chain, a specific order from Langley, a specific instruction to Kerr. The circumstantial case is substantial, the smoking gun remains absent. That distinction matters enormously. Set the Whitlam question aside for a moment, though, because regardless of what happened in 1975, the deeper story is what Pine Gap became in the decades that followed, and what leaked documents finally revealed. In 2013, Edward Snowden's disclosures included files describing Pine Gap's actual capabilities in detail no government had ever publicly acknowledged. According to these documents, published by The Guardian, The Washington Post, and Der Spiegel, Pine Gap, Australia operates as a ground station for U.S. geosynchronous signals intelligence satellites. In plain terms, it intercepts communications across a massive swath of the globe, covering South and East Asia, the Middle East, and portions of Africa. The Snowden files also connected Pine Gap, Australia to XKeyscore, the NSA's powerful internet surveillance tool. Pine Gap wasn't passively monitoring satellite data. It was integrated into a global signals intelligence network capable of tracking phone calls, emails, and internet activity of individuals. More consequential still, and this took decades to surface, the Australian defense analyst Desmond had been arguing since the 1980s that Pine Gap played a direct role in targeting for U.S. military operations. Ball, one of Australia's most respected strategic researchers, spent his career investigating the facility and published extensively on what he termed the killing chain. He was largely dismissed by officials. The Snowden documents appeared to vindicate Ball's analysis. They described Pine Gap's geolocating function, pinpointing the physical location of targets, including targets for drone strikes in Yemen, Pakistan, and elsewhere. If accurate, and no government has specifically denied this, then Pine Gap is not a passive listening post. It is an active participant in lethal military operations conducted by a foreign power from Australian soil against targets in countries Australia is not at war with. And this connects to a pattern that extends well beyond Australia. The dynamic, a host nation told just enough to maintain political cover while operational reality stays under American control, played out at intelligence facilities across Europe during the Cold War. NATO allies were routinely unaware of specific CIA operations conducted from their territory. Declassified Church Committee findings from the 1970s confirmed this as standard practice. The mechanism has a name: compartmentalization. You don't lie to the host government, you simply don't tell them what they don't ask about. And if a leader starts asking, as Whitlam did, that becomes a problem requiring management. So where does the evidence actually land? On Pine Gap's purpose? The documentary record, Snowden, Desmond Ball's research, leaked intelligence assessments, overwhelmingly establishes that Pine Gap is a major signals intelligence station, central to American surveillance operations and connected to drone targeting programs. The space research cover story was exactly that, a cover story. That's not conspiracy theory. The documents confirm it. On Australian control, the evidence is murkier, and that's the troubling part. Every official statement insists on joint oversight. No independent audit has verified it. The facility's operations are classified at levels preventing meaningful parliamentary scrutiny. Australian citizens living within potential blast radius, should Pine Gap become a nuclear target, have never received an honest risk accounting. On the Whitlam dismissal, the CIA's concern is documented. The Shackley cable is confirmed by credible sources. Kerr's intelligence contacts are established fact. But that direct link, the moment the CIA tells Kerr to act, it remains credible inference, not proven chain of command. Reasonable people examining identical evidence will reach different conclusions. That ambiguity itself is part of the story. Pine Gap sits in one of the most remote landscapes on Earth, red desert, cloudless sky, 1,000 kilometers from the nearest major city. From the road outside, all you see are satellite dishes and radomes behind security fencing, signs warn against photography. That's all most Australians have ever seen of a facility that operates in their name, on their land, under their flag. The question isn't whether Pine Gap conducts surveillance. The documents settled that years ago. The question is what it means when a democracy hosts a military installation it cannot fully oversee, conducting operations it cannot publicly acknowledge, in service of objectives it did not choose. 50 years of secrecy around Pine Gap, Australia haven't answered that question. They've made it almost impossible to ask.
Subscribe for more. We release new videos every week.